guys, Mike back again, and welcome to part 3 of my Forge World Thunderhawk Gunship build log. Yes, so in this video we're going to take a look at some tools. The next stage, once you have received the parcel, opened the parcel, enjoyed the experience of opening the parcel, and inventorying the components, and scrutinizing the components, making sure that everything's there for one, and is of good quality, that you don't need any kind of replacement parts from Forge World. The next thing is you need to do something with it all. You need to start clipping, you need to start preparing the pieces, and then you need to wash it. So basically, what I tend to do is I tend to clip the gates, the bits, the extraneous pieces from each component, and then wash it. And then as I'm dry fitting it, which we'll get into in a later video, I'll kind of tidy up bits or kind of do fettling of components to make sure that they're absolutely fine as part of the building process. So what do we need to build this model? Maybe not as much as you think, to be honest. When you look at some of these smaller components, for example, I mean this, for example, you would see stuff like this on your kind of, 40k, 30k vehicles. That's effectively a turret, isn't it? And in fact, you get some turrets that are much, much larger than this. So these sorts of things, most people are familiar with this kind of diameter of gate that you need to clip from the model. So stuff like that. These ones are a little bit bigger. But again, our goal is to remove this without damaging the component. That's what we want to do. And you want to go around all of the components. So we've got some little flashy bits here. We've got some bits of resin here that we need to remove. So basically going around all of the surfaces to make sure you've removed everything that you don't want on the model or is going to encumber your build. Again, here's another one. Slightly bigger. But again, trying to remove the pieces. Now, I shall introduce you to my my box of tricks, basically, and it's not that big a box. This is my sort of general hobby box that I build virtually everything with. I mean, there are a few tools that don't fit in here, but when I'm going to build a model, this is it. A little box. There goes my hands. So it's not a big box at all. I've got some just stickers on here to remind me what colour, I'll have to get into this in a minute, but what colour, what grit my sanding sticks are. So the colours refer to the grit of the sanding sticks, so I know which one I want to use. So anyway, so this is my hobby box. These are the basic tools of the trade, things you're going to need to put any model together, including a £475 model from Forge World. So we'll start on the right, seeing as I've mentioned sanding sticks, and we'll move over. So I've got a very wide selection of sanding sticks. I like these. So just move this out of the way and we'll go through bits. So back in the olden days, and again, I think most people start out with this sort of stuff. And again, I still use them. Each tool has got its own sort of purpose. Metal files of various shapes to file various different things. I've got some kind of regular size ones, and I've got some small ones. Again, lots of different sizes. You are going to need files to, once you've clipped components from the gate, you're going to want to clean the area up. You want to make it smooth, make it flush, make it flat, so you can build the model correctly, accurately, without any kind of anything encumbering you. So I've got lots of metal files, so we'll just get rid of those a sec. And again, depending on the component, will depend on what sort of file I want to use. I tend not to use the metal files so much anymore, and I tend to use these sanding sticks. We've got different grits, different colours. As I said, on the colour here, So this is a red and yellow doubler. So double-sided, red, yellow. My red side is 600. My yellow side is 400, for example. Then I've got double-sided, black and grey. And the grey side is 180 grit. And the black side is 100 grit. The lower the grit, the rougher it is, the coarser your sandpaper is. So when you clip things off the component, you might want to use a kind of a lower grit to kind of get in there, to get more material off. And then you use a higher grit to smooth it out to make sure that the component's looking like you want it to look. Now I've got a whole host of these, different shapes and sizes, different sort of thicknesses, some bigger ones here. I've got some other ones. Hang on a second, let me show you. So with a model like the Thunderhawk, you might have these larger sanding sticks. So we've got extra fine and fine there. Again, they come in coarse varieties too. So again, it's just trying to find the right tool for the right job. So with a component like this, once I've clipped all these off, I might be able to use something like this larger flat edge to make sure that the component is flat. And then I might want to use a fine grit one to kind of run across there just to make sure everything's flat and everything's as I want it to be for modeling. Beauty with the sanding sticks is that you can wet them as well. So you can wet sand, and when you are so basically I'll dip the whole thing in water and then sand with it. It basically allows you to sand and not leave marks in the thing that you're sanding. It washes out all the dust from the sticks as well, so you get a better sanding experience with the wet sanding. You'll get a much smoother finish if you decide to wet sand. So they're my sanding sticks. That's what I tend to use there. So let's put them all back in the box just so I can use this area here to show you. So I've got lots. So I'll dump them all out and then find the right grit and then go from there. Before we get to sanding, I suppose, we'll want clippers. Now I've got various clippers. These are for something else actually. These are kind of side cutters for cutting metal rods that I use. But these are my trusty clippers. I've got some smaller ones too. And these will clip the components from the sprue, and we'll have a go. What I tend to do is, I mean, you could, no, don't do it actually, don't do it. You could butt your clipper up to the side there and cut. There is a potential danger that you potentially damage the component. You can see I've got that butted up really well. But what I tend to do is sort of hold this in, kind of, just sort of, and then cut. So we're not losing the whole thing, see, and you'll get some splittage there. But what we're trying to do is remove the bulk of it without damaging the component. And then I kind of, because this is free now, because all three of those stems were connected, if you clipped one of them, there's a potential that this one could get kind of pulled out, like it happened, like it did, but we pulled out from here. So then we're going to want to kind of butt these up then, and then clip them off. And then you've got a kind of a rough area there, which you can then file off or use a knife to scrape off and make sure that that's completely flat. But you'll see that we haven't damaged the component. We're kind of taking our time. We are making sure that we're not taking too much material off all at once and then damaging the component. So that's that. So what we're looking to do is getting a set of clippers. Again, your mileage may vary. I don't know where any of these are from. I don't think they've got names on them at all. So I can't tell you where I got them from. But these are the ones I use. Side cutters, I've got not for clipping components, but for cutting bits of brass rod, which we'll get into in a minute. So that's that. So clippers, sanding sticks are an absolute necessity. What else have we got in the box? We've got some green stuff, and I also use this plastic putty from Vallejo. to do any gap filling, I use a hand drill and a drill set, 16-piece drill bit set, which go from, what do they go from? 0.5 of a mil up to 2 mil to drill any holes that we might want to do. And I've got a couple of different drills. You could use an electric drill, but I mean, I like the, although you can only fit with the collets in these hand drills, you can only get a certain size of drill bit in there. So if you want to be drilling larger holes, which you might well want to do, well, which we will want to do when we start working with magnets, your hand drill is potentially not the tool to use, and you're going to want to use a larger drill. Then we've got brass rod that I use for pinning. And again, with this model, if we're going to do any pinning, we're probably going to want, well, we are going to want larger rods. I've got 0.8 mil and 1.5 mil there. So if I want to do any pinning, I use that and then use my side cutters to do that. What else have we got? Got a just a palette knife for kind of shaping green stuff or flattening out green stuff. Pencil for not any particular reason. Then we've got hobby knife. Again, this is just a aftermarket one that I use. You know, just as long as it's got a sharp blade, you'll be fine. And I've got a branded GW tool, this scraping tool, which is very good actually. I really like it. This is not a sharp blade here, but you can use it to scrape material away from your component potentially. Again, in this instance, I would use sanding sticks or a knife really to get rid of that. But the scraping tool is really useful actually in certain circumstances. And we've got some tweezers just for holding pieces or bits or whatever it might be. And then we've got some shaping tools here for green stuff, some sculpting tools. So that's what's in the hobby box, sort of predominantly. That's what I use when I'm just generally building stuff. When we get into the larger components and we find that the clippers are not going to do it, when we get to stuff like this, we need to remove all of these clippers, even though they'll get round there. Absolutely no worries, and I'll show you. So we could effectively, the clippers fit, so we could do that. We could clip that. Ooh, that just about gets in there. So we could do that. I would advise not to do that and use a razor saw instead. Again, they're really thin blades, so the kerf when you are sawing is pretty minimal. But again, I would start out here, sort of in the middle, you know, just away from the component, and then just saw through. Take your time. I was just doing this as a demonstration, but I'll actually carry on just to show you what I do. So we are nearly through. Again, take your time. There we go. Okay, so we've taken the big gate off. We haven't damaged the component, and now we've got these 6 stems of resin that we need to remove. And I will go back in with the razor saw, like I say, because the kerf, the width of this blade is really thin. Taking it back into the component and taking each one of these off. But again, taking your time. I mean, I might just... Let's there we go. So that's one off, and again you can see that we haven't taken it all the way down to the component, and we've got enough room now to just tidy it up to make sure we don't bite into this component and ruin it, potentially at least anyway. So again, that's the sort of thing. The razor saw comes with different size blades, or you can get different size blades for it. So that's always useful. And then if you're really struggling, I've also got a hacksaw that, you know, we can get through pretty much anything as far as that goes. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. I mean, razor saw, hacksaw, knife, sanding sticks, sandpaper. Some of these, or let's have a look, on these flatter, bigger surfaces, if we had any issues on these flat bits, a normal piece of sandpaper would do you absolutely fine just to sand these again. Even on this bit, actually, even where this mold slip is here, rather than taking a knife to it and gouging the component, kind of a medium coarseness of sandpaper, just rubbing that edge just to take that out will do the job. So again, so that's what I tend to do. Then we'll have to start gluing components together, which we'll probably look at in the next video. So that's the tools that I use for kind of preparing the Thunderhawk. And I'm going to start clipping components. I'm going to start getting everything ready for building. And that was part 3. Part 4, we'll look at clipped components, and we'll look at what glues are we going to use to start gluing it all together. That's it for this one, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.